About ready to-
We are live on YouTube right now. So
Maybe I'll say something.
Okay.
It's nothing to do with.
Keep us in stitches.
Yeah. It's nothing to do with-
All right.
okay,
Are you recording yet?
not quite.
Okay. Seems like I do. This is the first time I really.
You are now.
All right. City of Florida Planning Commission meeting. We have a roll call, please.
Joseph Sullivan,
President.
Ben Hunsicker,
Here.
Darlene Rose,
Here.
Peggy Yoder,
Here.
Gary Connor,
Here.
Ruth Causey, Council Liaison.
Okay, thank you. Our first order of business is to approve the minutes. And our editor in residence, Ruth Causey, proposed a couple of changes. Can you tell us what those were, Ruth?
The first is on page 2 of 5, line 25. The line, actually, I'm sorry, line 26. As a generic definition that changes over time and technology, if you pull these two apart, it does really make sense to say it changes over technology. So I suggested that it read as a generic definition that changes over time and with changes. And the second one is on page 5 of 5 and line 6. The word TOO, T-O-O, should be
So it's just the spelling of the word too.
Oh.
So would someone like to make a motion that the amendment as Councilor Causey proposed?
On this page 3, action 4. Now, we were kind of going back and forth with some of these things, so this could be accurate. But line 9 through 12 is exactly the same as action 6, line 22 through 26. So I'm assuming we only did that once. But I know there was some things that we kind of went back and forth about. That could have been part of that. But I mean, it is word for word.
Yeah, it's identical.
It's possible that the motion was made initially and that initial vote didn't happen. I would have to go back and review it then.
And I mean, I suppose it's okay like this, but it makes sense that we did the same thing.
And I don't know, when I make a mistake like this, it's possible that you copied it and there was a 6 and it just never got revised.
Yeah, I'm going to have to look. And I always want to encourage you when you see something like this, feel free to email me in advance. But I realize that isn't always possible. But if you'd like to table these minutes, I can review that. I'd rather review that.
Let's see if there's anything else for the minute.
No.
I was just going to say, yeah, it is possible. You know, action 4 is totally something different.
Yeah. I guess when I see an error like that, we go back to the record and see what.
I believe you bounced around a little bit there, so
Oh, I
I'm
know
not
we
exactly
did,
sure
but
what the
that's why
actual course
I didn't
is.
think-
We certainly didn't vote.
Could I make the suggestion that if there are no other corrections, that you go ahead and vote on or consider an amendment to the corrections Councilor Causey has proposed so that I can come back with minutes that could be approvable, if there's nothing else.
Well, we
unanimous. And then we need a motion to table the minutes, or
And then I would take a motion to table the minutes.
I'll move to table the minutes until the correction that Commissioner Hunsaker requested
Second.
or looked into.
good unanimous. Okay, thank you. So our next order of business is a public hearing, PC22-07 for a variance of 2151 Applegate Street to exceed the maximum lot size. Tonight, we are going to hear a staff report and then a presentation by the applicant. We would hear public testimony in favor of the applicant and then in opposition and then neutral. Then we'll have the opportunity for the planning commission members to ask questions of staff, followed by rebuttals by applicant proponents and opponents. Then we would deliberate and make a final decision. And I've been told, what's that? Yeah, I've been told there's not anyone testifying, but is there anyone here to testify on this?
The applicants will be making a
Other
presentation.
than the applicant. Yeah. So I won't place any limit on your testimony, but please just tell us everything you want. All right. Persons testifying either orally or in writing may request a continuance to address additional documents or evidence submitted in favor of the applicant. If this request is made, please identify the new document or evidence during the testimony. Persons testifying may also request that the record remain open 7 additional days to submit additional written evidence. Requests for allowing the record to remain open should be included in your testimony. The public hearing is now open. Does any planning commission member wish to declare any conflicts of interest? Do any members wish to declare any ex parte contacts or site visits?
Aye. Or by what?
All right. Are there any objections on jurisdictional grounds, meaning that this planning commission is not the appropriate body for this hearing? Hearing none. Land use decisions, such as this case under consideration this evening, are evaluated against applicable criteria from the Land Development Code and Comprehensive Plan. A list of applicable criteria for this case is available as a handout at the back of the room. Here's the staff report.
Good evening, everybody. So I just want to start with making a statement that this initially was looked at as being maybe a Class A variance. It gives a little bit of variation to allow like a percentage for a lot to grow, and this kind of fell outside of it. So we had to push it to Class C, which is a little bit more stringent on its criteria for approval, and kind of a lot more to address in specific to how we go about making these decisions. So I wanted to start with, and I think out of addressing all the criteria, I kind of gave you, or what I feel like hopefully gave you a pretty good background or history of what was kind of going on here and how this kind of separates it and makes it and does kind of follow into a unique and maybe situation where it's more specific to this lot in this area rather than what you see in a lot of other residential districts that were subdivided into more lots that are similar in size and shape and layout. This area was not developed that way. It was developed kind of haphazardly throughout the years. And then at some point there was this this sanitary easement that went through the lots, and they, there's actually, and I think the applicant can contest to that there was nothing recorded about this easement, even though the city's been aware of it. I know it's came up before, but it wasn't on their title work. And going back through West Tech and through Public Works, finding a little bit more information about it, that it predates 1983, but it also kind of predates when the city of Philomath's zoning ordinance was put into place. So this lot, I think, was kind of a leftover from that. It was also a leftover. There wasn't sufficient recorded documents that I could look to that pointed to when a lot of these lots were subdivided. Typically, there's good records. You can go on. There's a lot of our GIS system and our mapping system is connected to the assessor's records. You can go on and kind of match them up, and there's certain things that link to recorded documents, and nothing kind of came up. So just kind of looked at how this area was partitioned. There's multiple lots in this area that are adjacent to the applicant's lot that are far above the maximum size allowed, which is what the applicant is asking for. So kind of just went through and kind of tried to give you a little bit of background on that. And I don't, and again, these are my conclusions, but when looking at what's already existing there, it seems like they are more in line with what is compatible and like building size, building site design. Still very compatible with the neighborhood layout of what's there. This lot, if you looked at an aerial, maybe we should, well, I gave you kind of an aerial. There are some lots that do have their flag lots. They have lots that are landlocked that are accessed only by cross-access agreements. They don't have any frontage. And they do have a house on them. They don't, but that's because they don't have a 20-foot wide easement on their property that would, like this particular property does, which again makes it unique. And I think it pulls it out of the self-imposed aspect of a Class C variance, where that is kind of the probably the most essential part of making your decision when you're looking at it. But I don't think it sets a precedent. I don't think it because of its uniqueness of how it is landlocked and you don't have access to it from through other lots, or the availability of access to other lots, and that it doesn't really have the capability of being developed. So adding it to this, the existing house is pretty close to having its lot coverage, meeting its lot coverage to begin with. This part of the conversation started when the applicants were asking about doing accessory dwelling unit on the property, which would take them over their allotted lot coverage. But adding this lot they had has a conundrum. They want to add on, they want to build, they want to expand livable space, but they're actually need the extra land, and then needing the extra land puts them up to the maximum amount. So there's kind of that economy, and taking a look at it from both of those standpoint. And then just looking at, trying to reduce this. This is a piece of property that that they own. They purchased it part of when they purchased their lot with their houses on it. And to look at reducing that lot and leaving still an unbuildable landlocked parcel really doesn't make any sense. So again, thinking that it is unique, it's not specific to a development pattern in the area. Staff recommends approval.
Thank you. Are there any preliminary questions of staff at this time? And there will be an opportunity to ask additional questions after the public testimony.
I have a question regarding this.
Commissioner Sullivan was first.
I think the wrong one. Go ahead. Please, Dave, please.
Okay. I just want to make sure I'm looking at the right thing. So I got the map, right? But I just want to make sure I'm comparing it to the right thing. You might just point to your picture and help me find the property on this.
So if you're looking at with the, I think the pull down, so this is the lot we're talking about right here.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, probably should have brought in the road a little bit, maybe even labeled it. So I apologize for that. But this is the property. You can see
I see,
how they have their house, their garage, kind of a breezeway there, which is included in the lot coverage. That you kind of, maybe just by looking at it to see that it's close to the 35% lot coverage right now. So adding anything to it wouldn't be allowed in that lot in the current state.
Okay. And I'm gonna kind of go out on a limb here regarding my understanding of Oregon land use history and laws, but you can correct me here. I believe the maximum lot size requirement was intended to encourage more compact development and more people living per area inside cities. And so if this 0.09 acre lot essentially is already not going to help somebody build a house, that makes our decision, it seems like pretty simple. Is that characterization fairly correct? Like, it's not like somebody you guys can build a house on this 0.09 acre thing and have a separate thing anyway, it's like really small.
Well, it's undersized. If it didn't have the easement on it and it had some type of access, yes, you could build that. Not the size. I mean, you're right in your first statement that, yeah, maximum lot sizes were put on there to keep neighborhoods a little bit more, like, similar in size and shape and design, not have somebody that's buying 3 lots and put more in a huge mansion, or house right in the middle that throws off kind of the synergy or whatever of the street, but also makes it more important for compact development where you want housing to be more compact. You're in a city, not more, if you want something on a larger and you go maybe to a rural community. But this particular piece, yes, is essentially unbuildable because of the easement. And if you look to the left side, there is a garage that's built right on top of the easement, which, from my understanding, was the simple mistake that this wasn't a recorded easement. There wasn't knowledge of the sewer line or the easement going across here when that building permit was issued. So it's not something like today. Now that we know that there is something there, we wouldn't allow any construction.
Okay, that answers my question.
And also, I do want to add one of the items that came out of my discussion with West Tech, as well as Kevin at Public Works, was because this isn't recorded right now. We know it exists. We know the kind of the general parameters, and it's listed on our GIS as a layer on our GIS mapping. That they recommended that as a condition, the planning commission needs to approve this is that a condition is that this easement get recorded and be part, that way going forward in the future, when they sell or whatever, it will be part of the title work, it will be part of.
So why would that be a condition as opposed to just something the city would initiate on their own?
Because, well, we would make them pay for it rather than the city necessarily going through and doing it. And we're not doing it on all of it, we're just doing it on their property.
It would just be recorded on their property.
So this orange part is the easement that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And so what is this easement for?
Sanitary sewer.
Is it already, and it's already under there?
Yeah.
Okay. So obviously you're not going to build anywhere in that orange is.
No.
They cannot, right?
Like I was saying, so by adding this, yes, it goes over the maximum amount of lot size, but then it kind of relieves the issue with lot coverage, which would allow them, and I think their intention is to, and people that want to, either expanding their existing footprint or putting an ADU on it.
Follow-up question on that. That actually reminded me of something. It sounds like putting an ADU on this little piece of land is very much in keeping with the original intention of kind of compact living and not have, right, exactly. If in fact this easement were recorded or made official or whatever, wouldn't that impact your ability to put an accessory dwelling unit on there, and that's kind of what counters the intention?
Well, they still cannot, regardless of putting, they cannot put the ADU anywhere within that easement area. It just would allow them to put it in their backyard. So they'd still be able to put it in this area here. But right now, as this lot line, you can see that very thin gray line, they could not put the ADU in there because they would go over the maximum lot coverage.
Who's this?
By adding this, they're allowing that percentage to widen.
So I guess I'm a little bit confused as far as the easement goes. If it's, I'm not understanding whether it's an official easement and or somehow needs to be made more official. It seems like it's kind of in this limbo status.
Well, I mean, it exists and it's part of Loma's system. And I mean, it's as official as can be. It's not going to, my understanding, it's not going to go anywhere. It's being used and will continue to be used. The fact that it is not recorded is.
So you keep saying that, but what you're saying is not recorded attached to their property deed and everything.
Correct.
Is it potentially attached to the other properties? Or you just don't even know?
I know there is some, there's the only record I could find is on this property over here. There's none on this property and there's none going this way. So, yeah, it's going to have to be, if they want to combine these properties, so the point is to not single them out and say, okay, you have to do it, or these people aren't going to do it. They're already going to have to go and survey this to combine it and go through a partition process to combine that and then record that. So all we're saying is when the surveyor comes out there to survey it for the combination is to lay out that easement. And that would be something that probably whoever they get with, it'd probably be a good idea to get with.
Probably something.
West Side. Pardon?
Probably something that would be done anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of the process. It's just adding that to the process is to do it. So then now it's official and it'll be official going forward. Where right now it doesn't exist. And there's probably just never been a situation like this that's warranted or it's come up. The situation that we required.
And just a little bit more technical. It's not that it doesn't exist, it's just not recorded, so it's still present, but when you go in do a title search and run the search for all of the encumbrances on that property, it's not going to show up. on that title search. And so doing this will also help sellers and buyers in the future know exactly what encumbrances are. So it's not making this official, it's still 100% there, but
Could
just
I-
for the recorded that it helps
Gary, could I?
Yes.
So what you have is a sewer line running through the lot. That's real. That's there. Normally, you've got an easement for 10 feet to each side so that you can get in there and work on that sewer line. And you don't necessarily want someone to construct over those 10 feet to each side because that impedes the ability to get in there and work on that sewer line if you need it. So what we're lacking at this point is, they know they've got a sewer line running through that lot, but we don't have the official ability to go in there and access it for a repair as it stands without having a recorded easement for it. I might suggest maybe going ahead and letting the applicants make their presentation. It might answer some other questions.
Well, I just wanted to ask, as other properties been sold with that easement, put it in the assessment.
We don't have the ability to require that on a proper personal property sale. We do as a city or a commission put that condition on it, of approval of a land use case. Whether or not this might complete almost half of the easement that's recorded. I mean, I think it would behoove the city to spend the extra money and do the rest of it and have it recorded, but that's not in my budget.
If any of those other properties came in with a development, like a remodel, maybe in a house addition, we would seek to proceed and get the easement. Obviously, because we don't want them to build over the sewer line.
So the lot size coverage, is that on the whole property, including the sanitary easement, or does that get out? I'm just wondering if they, if they want to build an ADU and a shop at some side. I saw, do they squeeze it all in here, mostly on the original lot, and that calculation is acceptable?
Yeah. So they would have to stay out of the easement. They build it probably in the area that's mostly on their existing lot, but if they combine it, they could go into this little green area outside of it. But it's adding the additional square footage of this lot that
Including the
easement.
Okay.
Yeah, allows them to, it widens their, it lessens the existing lot coverage to give them the ability to put that ADU on.
because that easement is still backyard.
Yeah, it's still calculated as the land, yeah.
Okay, with that, I think we can move on to the presentation. Can we read?
Yep.
What I'm going to say? All right. So I'd like to remind those testifying that you should direct your testimony toward the applicable criteria of the case and other criteria in the municipal code, comprehensive plan, or land development code which you believe apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the city or other parties the opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeals to the State Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. The failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages and certain formalities aside now. Please.
So we are.
If we could have them come up and sit in the,
Yeah, you can come up and sit here so that the microphone can reach you better.
Hi, Alicia Maria. We are applying to connect our two lots. We purchased the lot in June, and with the false understanding that we could easily put them together and build on the lot. So the easement is, in my understanding, a little bit separate So we would still like to combine them no matter what. We bought 2 lots. We'd like to have this one for lots of reasons. The lot in the back has no access whatsoever in any of, or availability of access from any of the lots around us. We found out after applying for this variance that there was an easement in it and also a sewer line. So we found that out through this. It was nice. So we are right now sitting at 10,890 for square feet. So it is already over just a little bit. Adding this lot would put us at 14,810 square feet. So that puts us at 4310, I believe, over the 10,500 square feet lot allowance. The lots north of us are all, I believe the 3 lots directly north and east of us are all above that already. The lot to the west of us is over already. And then there's also 2 lots farther west that are also on the same lot.
So the intent, kind of like Pat said, our idea is to put an ADU or there's a current shop sitting on the property, and we would transition that into an ADU and build a small shop. So getting this second lot combined, that will give me the opportunity to build a small shop, which that frees up our space for the ADU. And the idea behind that is just bringing in family, so that way we can take care of Asian parents and all of that situation.
Are there any questions from the planning commission for the applicant?
Just for a clarification, so this one here, this little part right here, that's the shop?
No, that's a lean-to.
Yeah.
That's a lean-to. So
Yeah.
where is the shop?
So if you come just on the opposite side, just come under it,
This?
yeah. So we have a breezeway,
Oh,
and then the shop is connected. So it has one roof line. So if you look at the aerial image, it looks like one gigantic roof.
Yeah,
Because
it
it
does.
has a breezeway between the shop and the.
Right, so where your pen is right now is the breezeway, and then the square just connected to that little lean-to is the shop.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
yeah. This is not just one great big
No.
house. Right there. And so there's no way that without doing this, that an ADU can be put on this piece of property because of the easement. There's just not enough.
There's not enough, they'd go over lot coverage.
Okay.
I think they only had they almost had less than 100 square feet available
Okay.
without.
Because, I mean, I would imagine, the nonconformity, that wouldn't stop somebody from putting in an ADU, being a nonconforming lot, because it's just grandfathered in, right? So it's what you just said, it's the space. It's not that it's a nonconforming lot.
Actually, an ADU is an accessory structure, considered an accessory structure, isn't it, Pat? And you can't put an accessory structure on a lot without a primary dwelling.
So we wouldn't be able to just build the ADU on that small lot, even if there wasn't an easement.
Right.
I couldn't put it there because it's a separate lot and there's not a primary residence there. So that would basically be a primary residence and you can't do that.
Well, I kind of figured that, to pay the $1,008 or $80 fee, there's got to be a really good reason to put it on that.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Deliberations. Thank you very much. There is no public testimony for, against, or neutral.
You might just make sure that nobody sitting out here wants to testify.
Anyone in the audience?
Anyone in the audience? No, they said no before, so.
Okay,
I assume
just
it's
checking.
Does anyone on the planning commission have any additional questions for staff? Yeah, Commissioner Hunter.
So in terms of square footage, with what they have, how large the ADU and shop? Or I guess I take it from what they were saying, the shop would be fine with the same space it was, but and I'm not too concerned about that. But the ADU with the two pieces brought together, how big of an ADU you should put in?
Well, the maximum is 900 square feet, so I just used the maximum.
Oh.
And it, by doing that, it still fell below the 35%.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Okay. So, yeah. Okay. I was just thinking, well, you know, you could put a 2,000 square foot ADU that on.
Am I clear to stick everything in closed public hearing?
There's no request for continuance or when we. Yeah.
Okay. Does the applicant waive their 7-day period to submit final written argument?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. The public hearing is now closed. So deliberations. Do you have anything you want to say or?
I'm a fan of ADUs, so.
I can't think of any reason to deny this. So, I think we can.
I also just want to add something, just clarification for now and maybe in the future. So they do have, when they're talking about a breezeway, it's kind of a large open area. It doesn't have walls, it just has that continuing roof. And they do have like a cement slab. But for all, you know, correlated purposes of lot coverage or size of the house, we consider that part of lot coverage. When you have an overhang and you have a concrete pad, we consider that lot coverage. Because at any point somebody could put in 2 walls and now that's part of their house. We do the same thing when we're doing even like a brand new house being built. They can put a concrete slab outside of their back door or their door walls or something. And that's not counted as lot coverage. But if they put an overhang over that, with that, that's considered lot coverage. But again, that can be enclosed. So, and that's just something that I was told by the building department comes from the state building code of how to calculate that. So we've been following that since the day I've been here. I think even where I worked before, we kind of did the same thing. But it's just under that kind of rhyme or reason that it's connected to the main structure.
With both.
Yeah.
The roof and above and below, but if it's missing one of those, it's not counted.
Well, I still think if it has a connective roof, it is considered. That doesn't have to be a concrete slab, but it has that overhang. And just the fact that there's nothing in there, there's not a playroom or barbecue or seating area, it's still considered part of the lot.
So there's not a written out motion, but if someone would like to make a motion regarding approval of this variance, I'd be willing to leave the PC number and do that.
I can do that. I move to accept the variance PC 22-07 with the condition of recording an easement.
Okay, all in favor? Oh, yes, we can. You've got something?
So, recording an easement.
Yeah.
I don't have terribly responsibility for it, but it feels like the city could have done this the right way to begin with. Probably no one here or no one you know is at fault. It's just one of those things that happen. It doesn't, well, the applicant is probably going to do the survey requires mineral units anyway. It doesn't feel like there's any motivation on our part to necessarily make them pay for it, versus the city pay for it, since it's not their mistake. I feel like it would make more sense for all of us, i.e. the taxpayers, to pay for it, even if the city ever these things have that recording.
So
There is a need. There was a request from the.
I was just wondering what, and I should have asked this before I made the motion, what is the cost of asking somebody to make it?
well, I had those questions at first, and what I think I heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that they're going to do all that work, and recording that easement is just adding a few more words into all the work they have to do already. So identifying what that differential cost with probably a couple more survey points and a few more words, it's probably pretty hard.
No, it's super easy.
Okay,
Well, it's super easy to figure out how much it costs, or it's super easy to do the work.
The cost, well, the work.
Yeah,
The cost, I would say it's probably not even going to affect the cost. He's going to do a survey combination. He's going to get a new legal description. And you're just going to add one line or two lines in there that talk about there is a 20-foot easement and this is where it goes. And all of these surveyors, they know Denny at West Tech. Denny knows all of them. Everybody knows each other out in the public. So they're going to get with Denny and say, Denny, can you give me, some parameters on where this is? He's going to give it to him. He's going to write it in there. So the additional cost.
So it's essentially a negligible amount of work that it's benefit.
And it's a benefit to
It's benefit
future owners.
to give the variance.
It's the right thing to do.
The benefit being that if the city has to go into excavation work, it's not going to be one part of the costs for removing the slab.
Anything else to discuss? All in favor of the motion? Aye. It's unanimous. Thank you very much.
I would like to,
Oh, yes.
thank you
I
very much.
will.
thank you.
Any participant not satisfied with this decision may go to city council within 10 days of the date the notice.
14.
Decision is 14.
Do I hear 21?
14 days
No,
of the date
14.
the notice of decision is signed. All right.
Okay, thank you. I would like to ask if it would be possible or appropriate for the planning commission to ask that the city record the easement for the other properties where it's not.
I was wondering the same thing.
I don't know if the authority comes from the planning commission, but I can relay that to Chris and see if it's something that the public works, now that they're getting another section of it done, would feel like, maybe it's a good time to even pair up, with whoever they hire to finish it.
Yeah, that one has the structure right up.
Yeah. It would be important.
So is there even a legal ability for someone other than the owner to make that sort of change to someone?
You can put an easement on there sometimes they're treated by legal measures, so if someone is able to build a house onto that lot, that back side lot, it needs access, they would have an easement onto the front lots.
But like those other houses that are there.
Right, but I'm just as an example, so what would have to happen is that more than likely, the back lot owner would have that surveyed and the front lot owner would need to have that added onto their title, or it would otherwise be recorded with the county, property tax or property recorder, because the whole point of it being recorded is how it gives notice to other people. So,
But the question is, these
Right,
houses here,
so what,
is the city able to just go to those titles and say, hey, owner, we're changing your title?
no, what the reason that people know about this and the reason that the part of the easement issue here was found is because the easement was recorded generally, it just hasn't been then reflected in the title. So that's more so on, you know, making sure that you have a filter to catch that your properties encumbered. The city can't necessarily force them to do anything, but it would be in everyone's best interest to get that in there so that in the future.
Is there a legal way that the city could decide to add that easement to all these titles?
I don't believe that they could add the easement to the titles. I think that if they want to get very precise, they could be the one that is for the survey be done so that there's specific.
So the
layouts
city
and
could
then
request of these owners that they add the easement to their titles, but they couldn't be voluntary. They would have to be voluntary.
Wouldn't it, if they wanted to sell their property, title search?
So they
No,
could,
it's not there.
Well, I mean, if it was,
Yeah, they're not gonna,
if it was surveyed.
if there's not a legal way to do it, they're not gonna.
There's not
There
a
would be
legal,
no reason.
there's no legal way for the city of Philomath to go to this particular owner and say, you have to add this easement to your title. Because the city doesn't own that.
well, and the easement already exists, so the city's desire to change the title just because it's there when there's no need to change the actual property line. Maybe not, it would be beneficial to the owner so that, and to the city so that there is no fight in the future if the city tries to come back in and say, hey, by the way,
Well,
sewer's broken, but
my concern is it's beneficial to an owner to not record it because it's easy to sell this house with the shop over the
well,
sewer, and then
just
we
like
know
that.
it's just like happened to them. So
but it would be on the title, I mean, not the title, it would be recorded with the county. So it still exists, it just would need to have a slightly deeper search.
Yeah.
And then I think it would be in everyone's best interest, maybe not necessarily someone that's acting as a seller, but as a general property owner, it's in everyone's best interest to make sure that their title reflects that.
yeah, I understand that, but the question is there anything the city can do to make that happen?
You said we could do the survey.
Well, you
They're
can't
paid for the
force, well, you can't force them to change their title.
We could request that they do it, and we could do the survey for them and request, but it wouldn't obligate them to change their title.
You won't even change their title. You could do it and record it. You know, it's going to be linked to their title. You're not changing their title.
Oh, okay.
You're just,
So it will
Yeah.
come up in a search easier?
Well, and that's what I'm trying to get at, is that it's already there, that's how we were able to find it the first time, is that it's recorded with the county.
But their realtor didn't.
it wasn't recorded.
Because
That's
it
the
wasn't.
problem.
Okay.
Yeah, and
So then
Denny,
we're,
and Denny, with West Tech, he concurred with that. He goes, I can't find anything, but I know it's here because it's, you know, he goes, yeah, we have it in our record. He gave you some additional information. It was never recorded, and we went back before 1983, couldn't find anything.
So has it been recorded now?
No, it exists with nothing.
So the city needs to record it.
But we could approach the property owners about recording the sewer line that runs across their property and a potential for an easement. We could approach them about doing that, but we can't compel them.
But what I just heard is that there is a way we can record it with the county so that it will always come up in search.
No, again, it's voluntary. We could survey it and we could have it in our record, but we can't record something on somebody's property without them.
Without their
allowing-
signature.
Yeah. without them knowing.
there's a way, with the literal sewer line itself, it would probably be like a court would create that easement so that the city can fix it, but the extra additional width so that we make sure that all of the equipment can fix it. That's the addition that doesn't exist now. So, and it's beneficial to everyone so that we don't have to go to the court to determine what its rights are, but the specific type of how.
So if you're saying if a pipe burst, you know, like on this one house on 23rd with the garage, in their garage or below their garage, we can't just go fix it.
We could,
Yeah,
but
it'd be emergency.
You said court.
well, we could if they wanted to fight and say you don't have the ability to come onto the property. That, I mean, they could try to push back. What would end up happening is the sewer would be shut off so that emergency services, those kind of things. But it gets messier to then come back and defend yourself.
Yeah, I mean, and that literally happened 20 years ago on 15th Street. So people refused to let the sewer,
Yeah.
public works come fix it.
Put it somewhere else.
I mean, I'm just saying that, so yeah, I think the city should do everything they can to whatever that is, to get it recorded.
So what I'm hearing is that the only thing that the city could actually do at this point is to do the survey work and request the home.
Right. And they would be the title, the fee for the, not only just the survey, that's its own fee, but also changing title and all that as well, because there is a fee to that as well, if the owner wants to have it on their property as title, or it's just they recorded it. So there's also a consideration for like.
And as Joseph suggested about the city should
But again, I think that's probably all we can do as a planning commission. And I think the city council will do whatever else they do.
or
Can we take a 5-minute recess
You
before we
bet.
go on to the next round?
We will adjourn in 5 minutes
Ding, ding, ding.
and come back at,
7 o'clock.
come back in 5 minutes. 57.
the city. There's a big compost facility on Highway 99. I went and visited one of these tension fabric buildings. That the manufacturer that we're talking to is a company called Clearspan that develops a prefabricated kit that can go up pretty quickly and fast. The site specific that we're looking at, if you see the new building kind of plan view, site plan view, it's actually already a 20-inch slab. There's already a huge thick slab there as far as impervious surface, other issues. So yeah, the impact, you know, we're hoping the engineering is going to come back that we can just minorly modify point load footing locations for some of these big steel trusses and use the slab as is. So it's trying to reuse the slab that's there. We currently use it for storage. It's going to be used for storage and warehousing and keeping things dry, because we currently have a lot of employees wrestling with tarps all winter long to keep these blocks in somewhat of a deliverable dry condition to ship to people all over the Western and all over the country, but mostly the Western United States is where. That said, it's a very different kind of material that we make. It's pretty specialized, but very robust. The tension fabric is really the only practical thing we can do for a number of reasons. Cost being to cover the amount of dry area that we need being the main driver, but also the fact that we're in a tenancy here, and you know, it's the tricky thing to try and build a large warehouse building as a tenant. So that's kind of, you know, the past is this company's been a little bit of a survival mode shoestring operation for a number of years, 15 years. I was a builder in Washington. It was one of the first builders that bought them. I've been specializing in high performance alternative cutting building for a long time. I came onto the company 3 years ago, and my coming in, replacing one of the previous partners, has really supercharged the sales, as it has the fires all over the Western United States, people's goals towards energy efficiency, energy code, et cetera, and healthy homes, and then lumber price spikes and valleys over recent economic fluctuations. So we have a huge demand, and we're trying to figure out, tell people when they tell them I'm on wait list reservation systems, it's growing pains. We're kind of having some growing pains. It's hard to expand a factory like this. These blocks are not fast food materials that they take a month to make. We have to cure them on the floor so we can move them and palletize them. They may have to cure for another 3 to 4 weeks before we can trim them and finalize an installation sequence and then palletize and ship them. So, you know, it's hard to squeeze it into small amounts of space, and it's hard to improve the capacity without some significant infrastructure and associated investments. We're excited. We were dreaming of a huge investment. Now the economy is rocking a little, so we're still wanting to keep going on this capacity increase that this building will allow and employ more people. Recently, because of our increased growth, we've started much better benefits packages, increased pay, health insurance, higher plans, et cetera, with our 18 to 19 employees total. And then what people don't see is that I am a little bit of the, I'll call it a ringleader, for lack of a better word. My network of builders and architects and engineers and subcontractors across the United States love this. It's almost a movement, like a straw bale movement. It's with our Timber Creek block. And we're not the only makers of this. There's one in Eastern Canada, there's 3 or 4 in Europe. It came from Germany, this material, after World War II as a rebuilding system. I could work, if we model it well here in Philomath, I could work with FEMA to set up manufacturing operations in fire-torn areas, to rebuild fire-torn areas up and down the West Coast. I mean, that's like a dream fantasy, you know, obviously, but it's got a lot of potential, a lot of interest. It's just, we're still in like the shoestring operation, trying to get past the growing pains part.
Okay. Does anyone have questions?
I do have a question. So if you were to be gifted a big piece of land, would you take this, tent building, storage building, would you take it with you?
Probably, ideally not. If we were gifted a big piece of land, we would probably try and build, we might dreaming in the dream space, take our block production side of the business and keep it here, or take it there and keep the panel and the garden bed production side of the business here, because it's just too hard to, it's too hard to move everything, all the, ideally.
It's kind of a permanent structure, but not a permanent.
If we were forced to move, we would absolutely move it. If we could keep both locations, we would absolutely try and stay and have a new location. Moving is not in our hopes. But as a tenant, as a tenant, I don't feel 100%.
You know the compressor for that?
I do. It's 300 PSI. Just under and tested. It's only 2 to 5% of engineers will use that in some of the calculations for cantilever and the ledger, the banter bolts. The concrete is primary in the structural calculations, and this is secondary. It's just a very robust formal system and installation system.
I'm just curious.
Mhm.
Does, pension building have any control?
It's got a great ventilation system, but really it's a passively conditioned space. It's the one color that we're looking at is opaque. It lets some light through, so it's heating up, and just by virtue of being out of the wind and the rain and dry. And actually, if you want to get into the technical things, our bodies and curing concrete makes heat all the time. So we are actually all human heaters, and then the curing of concrete makes heat as well. So there will be ambient heat created in here, but heat from any condensation dew point issues, we're going to have some ventilation. And the dust.
The lifespan.
There's a 30-year warranty on the fabric. They come out and maintain and tension it once a year as part of the agreement with the supplier, which is great for longevity. So they say it's going to last longer. The steel shell is going to be indefinite. The huge super tension fabric, I don't really know the real lifespan. We say, there's a 5 to 7 year warranty, but these garden beds that we make, I'm sure they're not 40, 50, 60 years in ground contact, because it's virtually petrified wood composite. So I don't really know the answer, but a lot of universities and major agricultural businesses and other businesses have invested in them with long-term business. So we're hopeful that's going to be a lot more than great.
Thank you. Other testimony?
A question, on these two pictures, it says up here that it'll probably look about like this one.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going for the straight walls.
There's fabric on the roof of that?
There is.
Because I mean, obviously the one here towards Fox is fabric. Tell that. I just, good enough. It wasn't clear.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
I have a question for staff.
Not yet. I'm clearly. I looked Robert right in the eye. There it is. So. Okay, the public hearing is now closed. Do commissioners have any further questions of staff?
Patrick had said something about, talk about the material standards. As I kept looking at this, since we brought it, you brought it up last month, but it almost seems like it would fit better if it were not a variance, that it were this kind of what is worded as being a variance would just be in the material standard. If it's, we almost have two issues, it seems like, that we're addressing. One is to put this as a variance, and the other would, why don't we just put it in the material standard?
Conditions on it?
If it meets this criteria, if the building is within a heavy industrial zone, it's not visible from the public right of way, and this kind of stuff, the stuff that makes it so they meet the variance, wouldn't that kind of fit just to meet the material standards without being a variance?
You could write it, you could probably add some more depth to it, but I think having the discretion of having staff have it be an application, it's not an expensive application, to look at it and gauge and be able to hold them to it. Because if we allow something that is a variance, I think we have more control of keeping them to it, whether if they build something, if it's just there and they build it, and now we have to say, well, now I can see it from the road or something, you have to take it down. I don't know what it might cause some legal type of issues with it, whereas this, when you're granted a variance, I think the city has more control, but I don't know exactly if I'm stating that right, but
It seems to me that as more new materials are developed and things come up, variants, they have to make their full case. But if we try to write language that just lets them do it or not, we have to be way more specific about what sort of material is okay and not okay. Is that an accurate statement?
yeah, it could be other things as well. I mean,
Yeah, lots of other things.
yeah, we don't know if it's going to be this high tension fabric either. So.
It seems like adding something like that just to the material standards would save staff time, which I know we should always be considerate of. But I guess that's what I thought when I was reading it, that it should just be allowed without putting people that meet this, they have to go through a variance.
No, I mean, I do agree with you somewhat, but I think, as Connor said, I think there could be other things, there could be other materials that come into, the discussion that we have to, that would fall into this. It would give us an opportunity to look at it and look at it more objectively.
Well, if I've understood this correctly, it's not allowing anything specific. It's allowing, through the variance process, allowing something after they give us an explanation about what it is. It's not, otherwise we're not, so to speak, he can come back with something else, another. He's talking about this clear stand thing, but if we approve this, he could come back with something else to get that variance. Right? Yeah, he could. Right now, we have the material standards, whatever they are. Okay? If we approve this, the only thing this is saying is that the city will consider allowing something else outside of those material standards.
But you got to talk to us about it.
But you got to talk.
Whereas if we write something just in there that allows it, we have to list all the things that we will allow and not allow, and that's a lot more. And not possibly see in the future as new materials are built.
Aren't we kind of doing that already though? Because we're saying these three conditions, A, B, and C, are starting to create a list now of things that we want to do.
But you still have to submit for a variance. So once it's a variance, it's like, it lets the city look at everything and say, well, no, because you want to do it that way or this way. But if we write it into the code, we have to be very specific. The variance just opens the door to be a lot more subjective. No. Yeah.
Adaptable.
Adaptable. I like that too.
I do have a kind of related question to Peggy's question here. Pat, I think I'm starting to understand you a little bit. I know what the city's motivations are. I think it has to do with creative cities, things that aren't unsightly or create a nice place to live. When people need to do things that are not pretty, generally speaking, they do it on industrial zone land. Now, it seems like we have maybe one of two problems. Either we have a lot of industrial zone land that is close to commercial or residential and we don't want it to be unsightly, or we just believe that industrial zone land should never be unsightly. For me personally, I feel like when you have these discussions, when we were reviewing this code amendment, we discussed the idea that maybe it's okay for industrially zoned land to be ugly sometimes, or have something that's unsightly on it. But ultimately, we decided to pass the language, and that includes passing these requirements on industrially zoned land. My question is, do you believe the right long-term fix is really to continue having every industrially zoned piece of property apply for variances every time they want to do something that might conflict with the code? Or do you think the root problem is really just that we don't have a really suitable zoning map, and that unfortunately a lot of our industrial property is too close for comfort? We were talking about long-term fix, not necessarily what we said on this today.
I think your first question was about do we need code to regulate everything that they do on an industrial property? Is that what, I thought that was your first kind of question.
Sort of, yeah. Is there a version of industrial property that does
Anything
not,
goes? No.
that does not need to apply for a variance or be restricted to things that are, it doesn't need to meet the new standards?
But like anything, you got to have like a set of, of rules to follow to do something. And then in our case, we allow for the opportunity to go outside of that. But under certain parameters, certain criteria. You can't just leave it to someone's goodwill if they're going to do something and keep something that doesn't turn into a nuisance of some kind or some type of environmental thing. I mean, a lot of what's embedded in this code and in the design of it is kind of environmental too. Keeping something clean and contained, whether it's even performance standards like noise, or dust, or whatever. All that stuff's got to be looked at.
Yeah, well, I guess what I'm asking is there are already lots of regulations in place about what you can and can't do. You can't just build anything where you want it. Even in industrial zone land, you can't put any industrial use there. There are a lot of requirements and a lot of governmental bodies that oversee this. And what we did is we took a pie of what you can do in industrial land and we just shrunk it a little bit. And so far, that hasn't affected city beautification. So far, it's created a small problem. So I guess what I'm asking is that really the right road to head down? Or maybe we're trying to solve a problem out of a bunch of industrial land in the city that's for historical reasons right next to the residential. The long-term fix is to say, well, industrial land, when we're going to redraw the zoning map or rework on it later in the year, maybe we should look at where that land is instead of putting more restrictions on it.
I think we're being accommodating. We're being flexible here. We're allowing something. We think we put something, a lot of time and thought into the material standards, something that you're going to get down Landmark Drive and maybe other industrial park drives that's going to look nice and represent and be representative of the quality that Philomath wants. This type of thing seemed very isolated, certainly pre-existed, and I think, well, not think, it was in conflict with what we had just passed. I think what we're doing here is we're being accommodating. We are opening it up. And I would rather do it this way. I would rather, on a case-by-case basis, you know, when something like this comes up and it makes sense, and there's good reason to allow some flexibility here, I think this is the place to do it, to have a discussion about it. You can't write code for everything. You can't just say, we're not going to even look at what's going on over there because it existed 20 years ago. I think this is great. I mean, we could easily said, no way, we just passed this. You want to bring in a canvas piece of property into, you know, our building into our existence. You know, we'd like you to build something more permanent, more tax dollar. I mean, we could have come from all kinds of different angles. Where we're coming from is we're being very accommodating. We want them to stay. We want to promote job retention. So I don't know. I don't know what you're getting at. You know,
I had a little bit of a hard time when we passed this before, because that industrial area needs the ability to do their work, but it's always going to have, you know, and if they just put up big concrete walls or decide to build a building of pallets covered with a blue tarp, you know, we don't want that. So I think we need something, and I like this. It is moving back in the right direction. If you meet certain criteria, you can open the door a little bit to do something a little less expensive.
Yeah, I guess, and it's neither here nor there, because, you know, we passed it. Why we passed it, it's a done deal. I think it was a moment. I really do. And I feel like if we didn't want industrial zone property on the fringe to do ugly things, then we should put in a subcategorization of industrial fringe property or something, and regulated that. And still allow people to do the work. And if I were in this property, and this, judging from what I'm hearing here, I don't think we're going to have a problem passing this tonight. But if I were in these guys' shoes and this were to pass, I'd say, well, I gotta conduct business. They won't let me put up a tent. I guess I'll just tarp everything with a bunch of ugly tarps because the city wouldn't let me put a building there. I don't think this is moving in the right direction. That's water under the bridge. Because this is the direction that we are moving, my question for you, Pat, is do you think this gives you enough leeway? Because I'm in the vein like, okay, I don't think we should be running these through the variance process. People disagree with me. That's fine. It's going to happen. I want to give you guys as much leeway as you can to approve the things you want to approve. Specifically, I'm looking at A here, the building will not be viewable from a public right of way. How would you feel about it saying the building will not be viewable from a public right of way that also adjoins residential or commercial zone property? Something that gives you a little bit more flexibility. So for example, someone can say, well, it's viewable, but it's only viewable from another industrial property, or it's viewable, but I'm going to screen it.
It's adequate the way it is. And one of the reasons is we know where this location is, and it is well screened. If it was on the opposite side of where they're proposing it, it'd probably be visible by some residential streets, and therefore probably not be. Again, part of this could be your general opinion about stuff. But I'd rather have a nice block brick building that looks fantastic with nice windows at the top and environmentally conscious, sure. Or do we have this where, you know, it looks like some type of sports dome or something, you know? I don't know. So it could be personal. I came from a place where everything was brick and block and massive windows, and you know, I could show you picture after picture of what I did for 10 years, and it's fantastic. Nobody complained. They built it, and they loved it, and the city got great tax base. I don't really know where you're going with this. If you could hate, I could hate this. You could hate this, you could like it, and you could like it. I don't know. We're trying to find something that accommodates to keep jobs here.
Well,
I'm not trying to, again, you can't write code for every little thing.
yeah, I've got a very specific question to your point, Joseph. So it says the building will not be viewable from the public right of way. But if there's like one spot on one sidewalk where you can stand and you can see maybe a third of the roof of the building and somebody says, I don't like it. I mean, should this be a little bit softer to be a little more a judgment call as opposed to viewable? And if you can see any of it, then it's not qualified.
It's true, you always got that possibility. Viewable, substantially viewable. I don't know. I mean, you could.
I see you guys' point, because I'm sure, I guess I would assume you can see the current building, 19th Street. And so you'd be able to see this from 19th Street.
15th Street?
19th. Out there by Joseph. Have you ever looked out your window and saw is it still a green building?
There's some tan hoppers next to our building that are much taller. You know the tan hoppers, so that building.
I'm gonna interrupt and just let
Oh. That's my fault.
To clarify, Pat, what I'm really saying is I want to give you as much room as I can to make the decisions that you want to make in the future. And so if another situation like this arises 2 months from now, I don't want you to have to come back here and say, we want to add one more amendment to allow us to do more variances. I want to give you as much leeway as possible to just make a judgment call to Class B and move on.
I guess I'm just not understanding what you're saying. I mean, sometimes, you know, you want to table this and come up with some ideas? I don't know. I don't know what you're trying to get at. I like what Commissioner Connor is saying about saying, yeah, if there's a little space that's visible, is that null and void in this
I mean,
situation?
G says minimum access by the public, you know, so if the public comes and views this facility once every other month, you know,
Well,
then that's minimum access. So I think.
but that's not going to be probably,
No,
that's not going to be monitored. That's just kind of a.
but I'm saying that we should add similar language to A, just so that you can say,
Minimally viewable.
or something just a little softer, so that you're not painted into.
No, I agree. I said that earlier. Yeah.
So just to comment, looking at, if you just take a step back and look at other portions of the municipal code in that 18.155 OPO class B variances, if you look at the other type of, or the other language that's in there, the idea is that, but for the code saying what it is, you cannot have this. So what can we do to actually allow you to have this? Generally speaking, these are, you know, objective standards. So as it's currently written into the proposed new language where it says ABC, you know, building is not viewable, primary use is warehouse, all development standards are met. Those are objective standards. So when you start saying it's minimally viewable, that adds ambiguity and it adds subjectiveness to how a variance is classified, and then that can potentially get us in trouble with LUBA if that decision is appealed ever because we're not following the standard criteria for objective standards. So I just wanted to point that out as well.
Is there a way we can make this objective just to kind of achieve what Gary's talking about?
I would have to think about that. I wouldn't want to try to talk off the cuff.
I'm okay with just moving ahead on this. I think Gary explained what I was trying to say, but did a better job of it.
You're right. I'm trying, everything I'm doing here, and I've done my whole career, is try to make things better, try to make things nicer. Not try to make things harder for people, not try to make it harder to develop or come to Philomath. I want people to come to Philomath. I just want them to do it right and be nice, and for you guys to go. To not drive down the road and go, God, we missed on that one. That looks horrible. It just doesn't match. I mean, the whole part of doing the branding in the Timber Town thing, I think it's an amazing step for the city. Now you're going to get some, you know, I know the word, but I can't say it right now. But, you know, just, yeah. I mean, I'm not going to be here forever. You know, who knows how long I'll be here. But I know I want to look back and go, I did my best to make this city look good and function right. And have people go, wow, I just drove through Philomath. What, man, that place is fantastic. That's what I come to work to do. You know, not to make it harder for someone to develop or try to find a way to, you know, scoot under the standards, you know, or this is complicated stuff. And I do respect where you're coming from, but sometimes it's harder to understand where you're trying to get to, because I know your heart's in the right place too, but it's hard to write this stuff to meet everything. You can't write so much code. You try, and then you bring up these little things, and then the legal mind comes in and says, no, I didn't go there. So that's where it all falls.
All right, well, I agree with you, but it's probably ambiguous the way that you can pursue anything. So, does anybody have any motions, questions, statements, protests?
I'll make a motion that the findings of fact as presented by the staff report be adopted, and the planning commission recommend approval of the city council for proposed development code as presented in file number PC 22-08.
Okay. Thank you. Any deliberations, proposed amendments?
I'd like to make a statement, you know, since we're not going to just add it to the material standards, so a person doesn't even have to apply for a variance, which I understand also the reasons why, because it is kind of hard to say exactly every single material that's happened that possibly could be used. But I would probably opposing what Joseph said. I would prefer that an industry come to a body other than one person. I brought that up a month ago, and there doesn't seem apparently a way to do that. I don't understand why, but I would prefer that these kind of variances go to the body. But that's the statement. Pardon me? No, it's going to go to the planning commission.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
For vote? Okay, all in favor of the motion? Aye. Thank you, unanimous. Our next public hearing, wait a minute, I have more to read.
Right, you still have the city council to go through for that
Okay.
approval, but once that does,
Yeah.
be ready for your submittal. You know,
Because the planning
or, you
commission's
know, for
recommendation
building.
is not a decision, it cannot be appealed. Planning commission's recommendation will be considered by the city council and subsequently noticed public hearing.
Date to be determined.
Okay, our third public hearing of the evening is PC 22-06, Chapter 4, Urbanization. The order of proceedings will be a staff report, public testimony, questions of staff, commission deliberations, and final recommendations. Is there anyone testifying this evening? Public hearing is now open. Does any commissioner wish to declare any potential or actual conflict of interest? Does anyone wish to rebut? Are there any objections on jurisdictional grounds, meaning that the planning commission is not the appropriate body for this hearing? Land use decisions such as this case under consideration this evening are evaluated against applicable statewide planning goals and guidelines and criteria from the Land Development Code and Comprehensive Plan as presented in the staff report. Mr. Decker, will you please give the staff report?
So this is just our next step, and I think it's actually the final chapter in the comprehensive plan that we're looking at. urbanization, well, it's chapter 4, but planning goal 14, where it talks about its goals and implementation of it. I've been living this for the last 3 months, expanding the UGB and Adair, where it's come into permeated my community, my life, awake and asleep. But so just going through, a lot of this came out of the H&A and the EOA. And I think through that and through some of the discussion we've already had with this, it's going to be a long time until we really apply this planning goal or urbanization at all. Because it really does talk about when you're expanding and urbanizing rural land. And we have such a huge UGB with so much available land for job creation and the 20-year residential land supply that I don't think it'll be years and years before we get to this. And I think I think the commission did a really good job of paring this down quite a bit to where it makes sense. And it does meet all the basics, and it does meet the goal 14 requirements.
Since there's several documents here, could you just describe what each one is?
Well, the first one I did want to mention was the Monroe urbanization goals and policies. And while they have so many, they have 2 pages, well, 4 pages, is because they have an opportunity. Monroe is a very small town. They do have, they're not at a point where they fell below their 20-year land supply, but and they just did an H&A. But really what wasn't taken into effect for them was a lot of the constraint land. I don't think they did a proper review of it, and that's something I probably will have to go back and do a little bit. And I think it's going to take them below that. I think they're right at that threshold. And for them, being that close where they will probably have to do an urban growth boundary expansion, it is more prudent for them to have this many goals and policies that they can look at to do. So to compare yourself to what Monroe has on the 4 pages to what we've discussed over a few meetings, and then what's before you tonight is just a page and a half.
Well, can we just say the first 4 pages are City of Monroe, and then the next 2 pages is what the chapter used to be?
Yeah.
Current chapter.
The current chapter.
Yeah.
Right. And then there's a track changes document. Can you describe exactly what that track changes document is showing us between the red and the black?
It's just incorporated a new introduction, and then the policy that I think went through all types of discussion.
Or discussions, yeah, or previous discussions.
Well, but then after that is the same thing without track changes, right?
Well, I think that's just that, yeah, that's the final document.
So my only question is, what's the difference between the red and black in the track change document?
I think it was given to you just so people could understand where it was, where we were going.
So all the black is language that we took from the previous version? That's all I'm getting. Is that what's going on there?
Black
No.
should be existing language, red should be new language.
So, but existing was the current language.
Black is
Not
the
some
current.
of-
Right.
Black is the current language, red is the stuff that was added in there. And they didn't do they didn't do the strike through. So,
And it doesn't exactly, yeah, the strike through is not visible. So it's kind of a mashup.
So
I'm just confused by it.
would I be correct in understanding that the page to the very top right hand side, agenda item 3.3B is an echo? That would be the new language?
Yes.
Okay.
and that
But
should
the
be
question is 3.3B there's things that are taken out that are not shown as being taken out. The black is just language that we lifted from the current version.
Yeah,
I understand.
I have to admit too, that I usually like to strike through, stay in there and wasn't, but, yeah, to show what you're taking out. Because I think the whole introduction here states pretty much what was there before. It was just reworded a little bit better.
Yeah.
And it probably doubled in size. What was originally was pretty small. But I think it captured what everybody was going, what we were talking about. It definitely led us from the H and economic opportunities analysis to come up with this, and it addresses the two main things: housing and economic development that's needed for urbanization and bringing land in, and talks about the collaboration with the county as far as the urban growth management agreement that we did 3 years ago. It was one of the first things we did when I came here. We updated that. So no, I think this is just a reflection of, and I don't think I was even part of some of these conversations, but understanding that the commission pared these down rather well, I think, for the situation that exists, in Philomath, where urbanization of new land, which this addresses just their urbanization of bringing land in, expanding the UGB, not going to happen for quite a while.
Question for you. Policy 3.2 is the policy that says that land outside the city limits but within UGB shall be zoned urban residential 5, UR5. That's the same policy that we had in the last one. In my thinking, that zoning already took place or was already designated, but we're just kind of restating that here, or that doesn't actually affect anything? It already happened.
No, I think that the land that's outside that is it LDR, which is in your comp plan, it's all stated to be UR5.
Yeah.
So it comes in. And that's really just a transition. I mean, this is right now, if it was to be developed right now in your urban growth boundary, but outside the city boundaries, they would have to adhere to the UR5, one dwelling per 5 acres. And it's really, if anything ever does get brought in, that might even change to something higher, because what we're doing, for instance, in Adair, we're bringing in 40 acres of EFU property. We're bringing it in as UR50. So it doesn't change the amount of use of that property, and therefore it doesn't trigger a bunch of stuff like a transportation analysis or certain other things. Whereas when that will be looking at transportation, environmental, floodplain, all of that stuff will be addressed when a development is proposed. And it would be the same thing, I think, for you when this ever happens. Somebody comes in, you probably would be beneficial to go up to like a UR50 or something, just so nothing increases. And then because you're under 25,000, the way the UGB thing is cities over 25,000, cities under 25,000. It's kind of, they cut the smaller cities a little bit more slack on what's required.
It looks pretty straightforward to me.
So are there any other questions of staff preliminary before we go to non-existent public testimony? There's nobody there online, you said?
No one has signed up.
As there is no one here for public testimony, I'm sorry, I'm going to ask it every time. Can I close the public hearing now? I'm always missing things. All right, public hearing is now closed.
There's a lot there.
There's a lot of stuff in it, all written weird. The script, not an act. Any more questions, staff? So, Mr. Covey,
Has the commission seen the Monroe document previously?
Yeah, I thought we had given.
Yeah,
brought
we
like
see
three,
that.
Yeah.
Stanton, and somewhere else.
State.
State.
Corvallis. And Dallas.
I think we used the same ones for each, same cities for all chapters. We were pretty heavy state with them.
Why did you include it again?
I don't know why we didn't include it.
What's that?
All of the cities, all of the examples, the only one we included was Monroe.
That was the one that I heard that I was directed to include.
Do we have a recommended motion for this?
no, we're just about to move on to deliberate.
I do.
There, technically there
I was just about
is.
to move on to deliberate.
But it-
Yeah, because she had a question.
I also have a comment, just looking at the agenda item, we went through the second, the first last page in the packet. I'm on the electronic version. The paragraphs are not the same distance indentation.
We can fix formatting.
I didn't know if that was
Oh,
still
these two
required.
down here, yeah.
And the between policy 1.1 and 2.1.
Please don't let formatting distract you.
Okay.
There is a proposed motion on page 4 of the staff report.
Yes, and as we've already kind of noted, let's say we are in deliberations now, officially for the public hearing, and there is a stated motion there, but it should be modified slightly. Someone was going to read it. Back to it. Wanna look at that? Yeah, probably.
Instead of development code amendments.
It's like,
Yeah. Instead of development code, it should say comprehensive plan.
Just comprehensive plan amendments. So I move that the findings of fact as presented in the staff report be adopted and the planning commission recommend approval to the city council to propose comprehensive plan amendments as presented in file number PC22-07.
I'll second it.
Deliberation. Proposed amendments.
Can I just make a comment?
Yes, please do.
I was recently attending a small city conference, which included Monroe. And I found that through my experience here, we've had a chance to review several documents that the city of Monroe has written. And I found them to be exceptionally well written. And so I asked them about it because I didn't necessarily expect Monroe, Oregon to produce exceptionally well-written documents. Nothing
Well, they have,
against
except they
Monroe.
have Pat, right?
It's a great town, but the city administrator told me that they actually had an intern that helped write these documents. And this is probably too far down the road, but I find that there are aspirational aspects of these documents that I wish were incorporated in the document that we have. And I know staff has criticized them because they're too aspirational. But I think there are some things here that I would like to ask the commission if they would consider. Because I think they're consistent with the interests and goals of the city. For example, document policy UR 1.2. facilitating control and having more housing opportunities. Policy UR 1.5 targeted revitalization. That's also this. And I think there are several policies here that we can do about including in our draft, but I also understand it backward.
Well, the thing that comes to mind for me when I first saw these, is I feel like this is having redundant to what was in the housing chapter.
I agree, that's
Because
what,
we addressed the infill, we
Infill and
addressed
housing.
density and revitalization. And it seemed to me that the Monroe document was more repetitive than in my.
But regardless, all we're really doing is recommending approval to the council, which is you. And you can slice and dice this however you want. You guys can initiate an amendment without us if you want. So, look at them.
Make a good point. I should do it.
And a lot of
Well,
those,
I thought of that too, and I did the little cross check. It didn't make any sense to add that, but I'm not saying there isn't anything in there that wouldn't make sense.
well, if you want to, the reason why I think you're seeing a lot of redundancy in that is if you read the statewide planning goals, and there's 20 of them. 21 now, they just added one. You look at those and you'll see there's guidance through there of what you need to address. A lot of it is just overlap. Things said again, said again, said again. So when we say we have met all of the statewide planning goal 14 requirements, it's because we went through that section and said, okay, yeah, check, we need that, we need that, we need that. But it's the same thing as you met in goal 10, housing, said the same thing, but you still have to hit them in every sense. You can't leave them out of 14 because we already said them in 10. 14 requires them to be mentioned and addressed. So there is a lot of redundancy in that. I don't know if anyone has read all those goals. They're not that long. Some of them are like a page, 2 pages, but you should take a look at them and see if that's really the foundation.
That's good and helpful.
As far as that, the Monroe document, they did have a girl that was super helpful, super smart. She was part of a program. Rare, yeah, she was part of Rare, and she was amazing pulling everything together. But the Planning Commission was really involved, like you are there too, and there was a citizens involvement group too. There was a lot of input, but she was a great organizer. She had the time to go and research and put stuff together. And I think I digitally gave you the document from Monroe. Mm-hmm. And I've had this discussion with Chris, hard to have it with him now because he's not here, but there's so much in that document. It's huge if you look compared to what the diplomas document. And again, people, places where I come from, again, we're super thick, very background orientated documents. Because sometimes, I mean, you can argue it both ways. You like it simple, you like it straight to the point, I don't want to go searching everywhere for it. I mean, the meat and potatoes of anything is the goals and policy. But then there's always the background leading up to it that if you have any ideas of where did you come up with these policies, you have that background information there before it. Like the transportation, you could almost put probably most of the TSP in there, as a lead up for it. But you could also get input from, Public Works of the county that writes a statement. This is where we're going, or aspirational type stuff. But the only thing you can apply is the goals in policy. So even what's in there, you can't say, well, and I think we started out that way a little bit. I think there was some question of like, oh, it says this in the intro, but you can't base policy or an approval on that intro. only based on the policy and goal. You can't say, well, in the intro and in the background information, it talks about this, but if it's not outlined in the goals and principles, you can't, or goals and policies, you can't use it. So, but I like that background thing, but I just like, I mean, I know when we first started this, and I think the first one was citizens involvement, and that may have not had a very big intro, but then we jumped right to just amending what was already there, rather than saying, let's sit down. But if you're going to do a document like that, you really do need citizen involvement. You need something outside of just the commission, which is recommended, but we went a different way. I still think at the end of the day, we can close the book on this is the last chapter, and I think you're going to have a great comprehensive plan. It's just not going to look like Monroe. It's not going to have that full background of this is where Philomath came from, and this is where Philomath was founded, and all of that. But if I get a chance to do the design manual with some code attached to it, we'll throw four pages of history in here or something.
I thought you were going to say that when I get a chance to do the 2040 update.
Yeah, I mean, you can have all kinds of documents, but really, you just want a good document that's easy to understand and point to, because you could write all these different documents and they just end up on a shelf. They don't go anywhere. But this is really what I use, to review stuff, for developments and codes, master plan developments. That's why this is really important. So I think you all approached it super professionally, and I think you got a great document here. Well said and done. It's just concise. It's very concise and easy for me to work with.
Okay. We have a motion in a second. More. Okay. All in favor? Approving this document, thank you. Aye. Unanimous, thank you very much. We have just a little bit more to read. If the planning commission's recommendation is not a decision, it cannot be appealed. The planning commission's recommendation will be considered by the city council and then subsequently notice of public hearing and date to be determined. Next meeting is October 17th. And is there just going to be one meeting in October? I thought we had scheduled to have multiple meetings.
I'm not sure what's on the agenda yet.
What's that?
I'm not sure what's on the agenda yet.
I don't have anything.
We have one new application in that will be a PC application, but it has not been deemed as complete yet, so we don't have a public hearing date for it yet. So
Well,
it definitely would not make the October meeting.
Yeah, I thought our next task was looking at the zoning. And then we had discussed doing some education a little bit, and I'd requested some sort of joint meeting with the city council, because once we start redrawing lines on the map, that's going to get a lot more attention than writing about urbanization. So strategic about how we approach redrawing the map. Okay. Staff update? There's a report in the back.
On the report, I don't really have anything particular.
On the building permit, this commercial demolition. That's more just.
Oh.
I'm not sure what that was. It was a partial, it was a somebody was demolishing part of a building for a future replacement. I can't remember who it is though. We did issue the Corvallis Clinics permit today, late today, for the Philomath Family Medicine remodel. So you'll start to see things happen out there.
Not really.
Yeah.
It was actually for liaison council. I wasn't at the last part of this meeting. When I was reading through the minutes, I saw that Peggy had a motion that was passed to make a request regarding our records to the council. I was curious if that was for the council and what happened to it.
It did come before the council, and the council approved extension of the audio for all meetings for 5 years. And I want to thank Commissioner Gordon for bringing it up. And thanks to you guys for your comments about the closed captioning. I didn't really, prior to the council meeting, I went through and looked at some closed captioning in various records. You're right, it's terrible. And as I was watching a record from another meeting, there were some four-letter words that somehow were created. So it's, but the primary problem. Yeah. So that was the decision. So 5 years, I need to talk to the city recorder about specifics. It was not my intent that the city go back and pick up 5 years worth, and I don't think we could from here forward.
We currently have 3 years worth of recordings. We have back to 2020. So no, it would not be possible to go back any further than that because those are audio recordings that have been destroyed. But we have recordings back to 2020 and we will retain those. We will build it up to the 5 years that the council has requested.
But I don't think there's
that wasn't addressed by the council. It would be appreciated if it was addressed, but wasn't addressed in your motion.
You talk about like a hard copy or scan it in and have it be digital?
The running transfer is covered now. Closed, yes.
Oh.
Because I was not trying to add to believe it or not.
Okay.
Read public hearing.
All right.
Thank you, Ken.
We had a quorum. We wouldn't